one Lalibela that I shall produce within the next few weeks. I would focus on some of the individual churches, the early ones and later ones. Go through some of the classic ones, and then of course the last one was this cross-shaped church of St. George. And so we are going to have a look at that. That's going to be our last. We have to note some of the tunnels and the vaults, underground passages that would also be associated with this engineering wonder. What stands out about Lalibela, of course, is the mountainous terrain, and so we'll have a look at that as we look at the context. It has been said that King Caleb probably had a role to play in the very early stages of the region called Lalibela, also known as Roha. In fact, Mengistu Gobese believes that it's only in the 50s that the name Lalibela became popular. King Caleb, some argue, may have been of the same identity as the Agor people, who are at the center of the Lalibela construction and engineering enterprise that we associate with these wonderful churches. The debate is there. But what we do know is that Lalibela, the man to whom the bees, appeared and while he was an infant, well, by legend, Lalibela would be one of the priest kings, one of several priest kings. He wasn't the only one that would be associated with that region. Let it be known that you have several other priest kings in the Lalibela context. And let us note as well that the last, Eid Barak, would, as in the case of the others, lay down and contribute in their own way. One final point, the Agor people would be crucial, so to speak, to some of these developments in Lalibela. Let us note that at the end of the day, the Aksumite Empire probably did not collapse in the 10th century, as is very often claimed. Instead, we may see the Zagwe dynasty as continuing, shifting the location, but not destroying the empire. Well, I have to say that Mengistu makes this point in his excellent work, and I think I'm totally convinced. Lalibela is a World Heritage Site that everyone should visit, whether you're Christian or non-Christian or a non-believer. It does not matter. It's a work of art, it's a work of beauty, and it's a work of exquisite human endurance, and we have to appreciate it. There are lots of local and international tourists that go to the region every year, and I hope that the TPLF and for example, who chose to occupy the region would recognize the legacy, the significance, the importance of this World Heritage Site.
Frankincense. Frankincense. From this direction. You see the cross. That is the place where King Lalibela was lived. That's the place. Inside the cave. They started designing the church over there.
On August the 5th, 2021, we got to realize that Lalibela was brought into the conflict between the TPLF and the federal Ethiopian government. And of course, this was devastating news. We had already panicked over Axum, and now Lalibela was being thrown into the fray. But that got me to go back to my field notes, check my digital and visual resources, pull out my video clips recorded in Lalibela for the purpose of this series on Lalibela. I plan to have about 5 of these, and this is the first. Each would be about between 10 and 15 minutes. Let me point out that Lalibela is special both for believers, Christians and non-Christians, and the secular, for the magnificence of its constructions, of its sculptured, rock-hewn churches. There are monolithic and semi-monolithic churches, 11 of which would be sponsored by and done by during the era of King Lalibela. Of course, there would be other churches before that, and therefore one of the illustrations in the next video would be about the original. Actually, a church in a cave that I was able to visit. But this first video focuses on the liturgical expression of the monks done at the church also called the Savior of the World. We'll come to that. I should also pay some attention to that church, that construction. But first and foremost, we want to celebrate Lalibela. We want to pay tribute to the people of that region. We want to pay tribute to the local historians, who are sometimes referred to as guides. But they're not just guides, they're custodians of culture and repositories of information. We have to celebrate them, and we do hope that this current conflict would not take a toll on the population and on the structures. Come to think of it, Ahmed Gran, the Somali warrior who basically destroyed a lot of churches, some say in a sort of tit-for-tat situation, he did not destroy Lalibela. He did not touch any of the churches in Lalibela because he recognized their uniqueness, their spectacular engineering and architectural skill, the skills embedded in those structures. And so he arrived at Lalibela and did not do the kind of damage that he did elsewhere. Let us hope that Lalibela would not be a victim of this raging conflict that we all hope would come to an end as soon as possible, because a long drawn-out conflict that ends up being a civil war is of no use to the TPLF, and it is of no use to the federal government. In other words, compromise, talks, and some sober, pragmatic solutions have to be made. Nobody wins a war. Too many people are hurt, are damaged. The conflict, regardless of the cause, usually ends up killing a lot of innocent people. And already we have seen this in the case of Ethiopia. We've seen so many refugees thrown into Sudan and elsewhere. Many have been killed. It's time to halt the madness. So the idea of rotation of power is something that really we have to very seriously consider. In any case, going back to Lalibela, let me just point out that Emperor Lalibela was determined to create his own Jerusalem right there in Africa, in Ethiopia in particular. And so he set about using the local materials and the local artistry, the artisans, the specialists, the skilled workmen, who for 23 years apparently, although I've heard also even up to 30 years, would devote themselves in creating this dream. We should note that the sculptured churches, they are sculptured, they're not just rock hewn, you know. Granted that you have a lot of different processes taking place here. First of all, there's identification of the mountainous terrain that is most suitable for the planned construction. Then there is the element of quarrying, the element of careful excavation, the element of sustained chiseling. Not to mention the fact that a work of art requires painstaking, imaginative implementation. And this is all there in terms of these magnificent churches.